meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page. The following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link attached to the agenda, which can be found on the town website's calendar. From a telephone, dial the toll-free number 888-475-4499 and enter webinar ID 909-174-0347. This agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any announcements from the committee?
No.
The only one that I have is just what's listed on the agenda, and I'm going to keep on there because it needs to be on there. The planlunenburg.org website is still up and running. There's still a survey that I encourage town people to take. It can be adults, it can be kids, doesn't matter. We would like to have just about everyone's input. The more input, the better. There's a QR code on there as well. If you want to do it from your phone directly, that's fine as well. And they will be meeting next week as opposed to tonight. There was a small kerfuffle, you could say. A kerfuffle. We'll call it a kerfuffle. But they will be meeting at 6 p.m. next Thursday, the 14th, in this room. With that, is there any public comment from the public?
Good evening. I'm Anna Lockwood from 91 Main Street. I'm also the chair of the Parks Commission, and I noticed that you had capital planning on your agenda for discussion later tonight. And I decided to stop by and make a comment as a person who serves on the Parks Commission. I went to the facilities presentation, which Parks currently falls under the facilities department in town. Currently the Parks Commission have 3 projects there, which one is the McNally survey and conceptual design. The second one is weed removal from Marshall Pond, and the third is the resurface of the Wallace basketball court. I responded to some of the questions that the members had. And then I watched their meetings from, I think it was this Monday. And their meeting compelled me to start some strong advocacy for the parks. They did have some good questions that I felt, but I feel like, as it has been before, park has some disadvantages where it falls within town, because we are, one department that falls under recreation in the same group as facilities. As you can imagine, priorities for facilities versus recreation will always fall under not being as important as fixing a building or maintaining safety of some sort. So I feel like that setup alone is unfair to parks and recreation in town. The other thing that's been sort of unfair, and I don't like throwing the word unfair lightly out there, but maybe it's a good one to describe this. In the last 3 years, parks have been under 5 different leaderships. First was under the DPW leadership of Jack Radocran. Then was for a little less than a year under Rob Oliver. Then it was for a few months under Bill Bernard. Then we didn't have anyone who we fell under the town manager because we had to hire a facilities director. Then we had a facilities director, Paul, for a couple months. And then we didn't have anyone again. And then just this year, I think was late January, we got Chris Ruth, which is the facility director. And some of the questions that the capital plan team had were valid. But because of this transition in departments and personnel, we don't have all the answers that I think they would like to have, but I hope that they would entrust that we want to have this done, and some of these things need to be done, such as, why do we need to resurface the basketball courts? Well, because they are there and they need to be resurfaced, and if we don't resurface, we're going to end up with cracks on the courts like we had a few years ago, and that repair is going to cost us a lot more. Why does it cost a lot more? Well, that's where we don't have the person who originally got the cost estimated for this project. They are gone, but it is a cost that's aligned with the previous costs. So therefore, nobody's creating the need out of nowhere. It is a need. But these kind of questions that are fair questions, but just this transition in personnel really makes it difficult to answer. And us being just volunteer and not being privy to some of these questions or being charged with having that information makes it that we don't have it. So it's important to, recognize some of these difficulties that Parks and Recreation have had over the past year and work with us on recognizing the importance of recreation in everybody's lives. During COVID, the fact that we had very limited recreational and accessible outdoor spaces was difficult for a lot of seniors. We have a lot of open conservation land, which is very valuable and important, but we really don't have accessible places. The fact that we have, 3 basketball courts in the entire town that's open when the schools are closed is also something remarkable. We need to be able to get people out. So, to think that because we never funded parks the way it should be, that it doesn't mean, it equally means that we don't need recreation or fund, it's not a fair assessment. The other thing that I also want to mention is that for many, many years, we did not fund parks and recreation properly in town. Until recently, we did not have a recreational director. Just this past year, we have had a more consistent person on that role. And before that, many years in a row, we would have money that were left over from the parks budget that we didn't do anything with the money that got put back in the general fund. There was one year that I know in the past 5 years, it was more than $20,000. Meanwhile, our town beach house was in disarray. There was a wall that was about to fall apart. And within notice of that is last year, the parks revolving fund was what paid for that repair of the town beach house. That fund is funded by the beach fees that we collect over the years from just the memberships and swim lessons, and also from other programs that we run in town. So anyway, long story, I can tell you all more about parks and recreation, but I hope that you guys, as you talk later on about the capital plan, that you can see the 3 requests that Park has and see that aside from the facilities, because we're not facilities. We are a different need than facilities that we have in town, and that's important to recognize. And the way we are structured, doesn't give the room for that. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Passios.
Good evening. I apologize for being late. I needed to make a public comment at a meeting over at Ritter.
No problem. Do you have any public comment or announcements that you'd like to make?
Nothing at this moment. No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moves us on to town manager report. Ms. Lemieux, do you have a report for us this evening?
I don't have anything to report for tonight.
Excellent. Nice and quick.
I don't have nothing. Double negative.
All right, so that moves us on to our old business, moving on to the treasurer year-end cash report for DOR and municipal investing. So everybody should have a printout of both of those documents that our treasurer provided me with a couple of weeks ago. And I've actually invited her as well. She's on the call now, Mylene. Thank you very much for joining us. I just we've had it on our list of topics to discuss for a number of months now. It's come up a number of times over the years, just to kind of go through and identify where or what funds we have in what different types of accounts, and whether those funds are sitting in sort of the best types of accounts for maximum returns, maximum yields, consolidation ideas, or just kind of to work through the whole ins and outs of the process. And then I believe there was a number of questions that some of the committee members had as well. So if you're amenable to that, I would at least open up the conversation in general to the committee first to see if there's anything that anyone is, having had a chance to look through here, whether it be through the accounts portion, whether it be through the municipal fund buckets conversation as well. Either one of those, please feel free to start this off with a conversation. I'm going to pull up the documents while we're waiting.
So they just, hi, I'm Miley Malari, treasure collector. Do you want me to start just going one by one, or do you want me to wait for any question?
I think it might actually be good to do an overview sort of initially of just kind of the document that you had shared with us, and then we can kind of get into a little bit more detail if you don't mind.
Sure. So basically, these are all the accounts that the town has. This is the report that we normally send to the DOR, part of the process on getting the free cash. Some of these accounts are spread out. Some are grants, some are special fund, and some are agency accounts. Some are used for our general fund to cover payroll and payables. There are general funds that's spread with the different institutions to get the highest interest yield that they can offer to the municipality. And some of them are trust fund. Let me just minimize it so that I can view it myself. So some of, as you can see, there's the enterprise fund. Can I control it so that I can?
Sure, if you'd like to share, feel free. Let me stop my sharing.
Okay, no, you can just share that as long as I can minimize my screen so that I
sure.
can. And then some are special accounts with everything. Everything on this accounts that you can see are statutory investments. Yeah, so as you can see, there are trust funds, municipal trust funds. Please keep in mind, they're not regular trust funds. That's just like the regular person. They are municipal trust funds, stabilization fund. Yep, all that 9 yards.
Mylene, Dave Passios, one of the members of the committee. Quick question for you. How often do you review these accounts that you could move them from one type of an investment to another for better interest?
I reconcile the cash book every month. I have a monthly reconciliation to all of these accounts. We can record everything, every interest yield that we need to do every month, so we can see how much, the interest gain and everything. And we have representative from the vice president representative of each institution that if there's changes that on the interest yield, that they will communicate with us, because as they are more like fixed, most of them are fixed investments. So when there's a changes, changes on the interest yield, they will stop by to the town office, treasurer's office to notify us about the changes and everything like that.
Okay, one other quick question, just looking down through the numbers very quickly.
Yeah.
Can I assume that most of the accounts that are less than, say, 0.5% interest bearing are liquid accounts that are such that they can't earn a lot of interest because they are so fluid?
As you can see, it says liquid investments are the liquid investments.
Right.
And then, those interest checking accounts are the ones that we're covering. Some of them are the ones that we use for general fund to cover expenses of the town. Arch Lottery is different because, it's it's a special account and playground fund, so we cannot just touch it without specifically going to that account. Liquid account, you can see all over that field is the school activities account. Those are agency funds, so they are not, they also specifically covering the expense and receivables of school activity accounts. The grants, same thing. The ARRA grants, same thing, but they are liquid accounts, so if there's an expense that needs to be covered on those fields, we can just easily, use those funds in there.
Thank you.
Other one is the investment account, as you can see, and the purpose.
So that's one of the questions that I had. For example, in the liquid investments, there's three different banks, the top three, that are investment accounts, ranging from $343,000 to $533,000. And I understand the reasoning behind having the money spread out across multiple banks so that the town doesn't assume any additional risk if a bank has a loss or anything. But is there, where one of those accounts is putting out roughly 4% interest and the lowest one is putting out 0.01% interest, is that just bank to bank, or is there another reason why we couldn't be kind of maximizing a percentage rate increase from just a simple investment account such as that?
Actually, I think Bank Hometown is, I think in July, but I'm gonna double check again. The last conversation I have with the representative, I know the interest went up previously. So keep in mind, this is based on June 30. Bluestone Bank is just a new account just opened. I think we opened it in June, the month of June. They are opening, they're offering that interest rate to just open an account. So I did open it for $500,000 to get that privilege of the 4% interest, APY, annual percentage yield. So.
Okay, so that's not likely to be something that'll sit at 4% for the years to come. That's just because it's a new account that was opened up. It's sort of a...
Yeah, so, and then, well, supposed to be, they are offering that. It might change after a year, depending on, the changes on the Fed and what they offer, that they can offer on their bank. So, yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay. And are these just general accounts that are in these banks?
Yep.
Or are they,
So-
is there anything specific for municipalities within the banks themselves?
They're all under the Mass General Law, what they call legal list and also savings bank. So they are fall under Chapter 44. Hold on a second. What I sent you. They all fall as the operating funds, Chapter 44, Section 55.
Okay. The ARPA funds, bond proceeds, payroll, payables, operating funds, those ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for treasurer regarding any of these?
So I guess the question I'd have is, some of these stabilization funds, OPEB, maybe something like that. I mean, right now, money markets, it's easy to get like a 5%, you know, almost zero risk kind of investment. S&P, you get, you know, typically about an 8% return. Do we have the ability to kind of just, you know, invest this like we would, you know, our own retirement funds, you know, that you're doing better than the rate of inflation? And it seems like pretty mediocre interest rates that we're getting across the board.
Hold on, let me just figure out again how to minimize the screen.
I mean, especially something like an OPEB account where that's going to, you know, well into the future, we should be seeking, you know, I would think
so-
like 8% returns on average.
Those stabilization funds falls under, chapter 44, section 54. Those has to be, you know, they have to be invested on that category, on that Mass General law. So as long as, they are in a safety type of investment that we cannot lose any principal. Because the main purpose of this municipal investments is to preserve and safety of those accounts, preservation of the accounts and safety of the accounts. So right now they're under Bartholomew, which is our finance advisor, because they have all this expertise in regards about municipal investments, Mass General law, and what they can do and they cannot do. And then also expertise on investment, on how to invest those funds without losing anything. So that's why they're under, I feel like they know what they're doing, and I don't have to worry about the thing, because they are handling a lot of towns and city in Massachusetts that they're looking at these funds. At the same time, invest them in a proper guidelines and statute of investments for municipality.
All right, so let me ask it again, like, can we go into a money market account?
We can. Again, they have to be secured for insurance. So we can, yes.
I mean, so money markets right now, institutional money markets, I'm pulling over 5% interest on my own. But with the amount of money we're investing here, I don't know why any of the long-term investments would be less than 5%. Have we asked whether we can move into that?
So keep in mind, we cannot compare personal investments to municipal investments, because there's a guidelines on how to invest municipal funds. That's why it cannot be apples to apples. So if we can, some of this investment in the banks are money market. So as long as they fall in the guidelines and the legal list of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we can certainly invest it in money market, as long as they have coverage, because we have to make sure that the town is covered. If something happened, like something happened with California or something, that one of our two institutions failed to, so we want to make sure that will not happen to the municipal funds.
I guess I'd like to see 5% interest almost across the board at this point, given where safe investments are. So I think,
Yeah.
like, saying that it's safe, fine, just, you know, put it under your pillow and it's safe, but it's also safe right now to be at 5% returns. I don't know.
So, when we go by the federal, whatever the interest that they offer from the bank, as long as they are savings banks and everything like that, so far the highest interest rate that they can offer us is the one that I have. And keep in mind, some of these are lower because they're offering a free service to the town. That means they're not charging the town wire fee, NSF fee, service fee, like, for example, the online banking. They don't charge the town fees to have this available to the taxpayer. So some of them are, they have lower interest, but they provide service to the town for free.
I guess free's not that great if you're not getting good returns, though.
Well, it's more like what they call I forgot the word. They give us free, yet they don't charge us fee, so it's kind of like it's blending the same way. Instead of give us a lot of interest, but they're gonna pose a lot of fee to have this service, available to the town. It's more like they're getting their fees through the interest, basically.
Yeah.
I forgot the exact word, I'm sorry. I will just have to look at my notes. I forgot what they call it. They have some wording to it, and I forgot all about it. I don't have it on top of my head right now.
Mylene,
But as you can say, we can certainly invest it as long as they fall on this Massachusetts Mass General Law.
in my mind, that begs the question, are there a lot of fees attached to most of these accounts? I mean, when I look at my banking, I go to a bank that has virtually no fees or the least fees possible. I'll move accounts from bank to bank as they add fees.
Well, as you can see, they charge fee every time we do some wire. They charge fee when there's NSF, and and then lockbox. To receive a lockbox, the last time we have a code is $5,000 something. So, but. They still gave us a good rate on having those lockbox. Lockbox are the mail payments that they receive, and the bank automatically process them. And what they do is they send a file to us to upload it to our system. So that alone, that's last 2 years, is $5,008 something. But they gave us free service to have the investment over there. And then again, they give us a good service, good interest rate, so. And that's per month, not even per year.
So do we find that if we go to some of these banks or these investment companies, and for them to put forward a product that meets Chapter 40, Mass General Law, Chapter 44, either Section 55 or 54, they'll drop the interest rate in order to meet the requirements within that specific law and section? Is that sort of how it works then?
No, what happened is they still go by with the federal interest rate or something.
Okay.
So, and then, of course, they will talk to their to the bank, see what they can offer, to municipalities. So it may go up, it may go down, depending upon what they can offer.
Okay, thank you.
Mylene, Dave Passios again. Quick question for you. By regulatory requirements, is there anything in the processes of handling these accounts or moving money in and out of them that cost more than the amount being handled. I bring a case in point of a number of years ago where the assessors were looking for a change, I believe it was through town meeting, to be able to not bill for personal property amounts less than a certain amount because it was costing them 45% or 50% or 100% more to process than they were getting in. Is there anything in your processes presently that are kind of like that?
Well, like I said, some of the accounts, with the one that we have for a higher, service fee, like for the online, for the deposits to scan, deposit, express deposit that they offer free, for all the, ARP exemption that come, when something clearing to the town, they have this cash management that really looking at those and communicating with them if something arises. So they're really covered with all this, the agreement that we have with them. So right now, the only expenses that I have normally is if the lockbox, but I got it to have it free lockbox. But they cannot offer higher yield because they're already offering those services. So right now, I have a line item for expense for lockbox, but I got it able to get it free because that's 5,000 something. So far that I know, in regards about service, they're all covered because of our agreement on their investments.
Okay, thank you. The question was only that, is there something that we as the Finance Committee or somebody else at the town side could help you mitigate so that it saves the taxpayers money? Thank you.
What is the MMDT Institute, Financial Institute?
MMDT is the Massachusetts Municipal, hold on, let me just find it again. It's the, I forgot it on top of my head, but it's a money market account that has a portfolio also that is used by the state government too, but there's no insurance coverage to it. It is, hold on a second, I saw that a while ago. It's, I think, municipal money market depository. It's a money market that has a big portfolio, but there's no insurance coverage, but it's still recommended by the state that you can make investments to.
Yeah, I mean, right now, their interest rates are blowing away this Bartholomew. And I only pick on that because, we have like $5 million in there, so a percentage point is, over 50K a year.
$5 million?
Well, I'm just looking at your E-term investments section. There's $5.4 million in kind of investments there, many of which are this Bartholomew.
Well, some of them are stabilization funds, some of them are scholarship fund. So those are again, those has to be in a safety, because once something happened on the money market for MMDT, there is a possibility that you can able to lose fund, but then again, it's, the state is in the state recommendation, so.
Mr. Chair, for the committee's information, Massachusetts Municipal Depository Trust
Okay,
is the entity.
thank you. Madam Town Manager, do you want to jump in here and discuss a little bit of the investment policy for the town as well?
Managing $31 billion in assets. They're pulling a yield of 5.6%.
Note just to make sure that the finance committee also has that in mind as when they're reviewing the investments.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of go into a little more detail if you wanted to. Thank you.
Do we have policy related to, town policy related to how to invest money?
Yes, that's what I just was referencing. Making sure that the committee was also, when you're having this discussion, if you're familiar with our investment policy.
Oh, okay.
And that can be found on the town website under the Select Board Policy and Procedures. It's page 47.
Okay.
What is the Arts Lottery?
Arts Lottery is the Lunenburg Cultural Council.
I'm sorry, what is that?
Cultural code.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
For some of the smaller accounts, do we have the option to consolidate any of that? I mean, I know it would likely take some type of a vote, but, I looked and see that the playground fund at $84.47, is that owned and operated by Parks? Is that owned and operated by the town directly? Is there a way that we could, and it's making 5.3%, it's one of the highest ones we have on here. Is there a way we could move other funds into that account and consolidate, or is that just our choice, or is that sort of up to the town itself?
So some of this, I asked the same question, like those grant that's been sitting before even my time. It's been sitting like that for the rest of many years. I think it's Ms. Karen that can answer that question because, maybe she can just track them on her site instead of having those in a bank. But some of this investment has to be separate because they have a binding.
No, I can see that for like OPEB funds or for some of the stabilization
No,
accounts, yeah. of course.
OPEB, it has to be by itself.
Right, exactly.
So, like this, the grant, the smaller portion of the senior center grant, the septic grant, there's, maybe, I don't know if we can put down in the general fund and just track by the accounting department. But then again, they have, in the very bottom says due to grant restrictions. That's why do we have to put them underneath, maybe we can't do it because they have restriction posted on them when the town initially received the funds. I just don't know if we can just track it by the accounting department on their ledger, but have this put it in the under general fund. I'm not sure. Only Ms. Karen can able to answer that, since she's been here for before my time.
Well, I know, for example, the septic grant for
Right.
$90,000 has been there
I've been
since
staring at that for the last 5 minutes.
1987, I think? Was that what it was, Dave? 87 is when
I believe so,
Yeah,
yes.
and we're finally spending it.
And we even have a $20.30 that I've been reconciling for the rest of my time here in town. So then again, they said they are in a restriction grant, so that's still a big question mark. Maybe Ms. Karen can help us answer the question.
Okay, thank you. Jay, did you have something?
Yeah, the interest-bearing checking accounts, are we using those to pay bills?
The sweep account is similar to, that's what we use for covering payroll and payables. The online, as you can see, we use that for the online. And then again, we use to cover some debts or loans of the town. So payable sweep is the one that, it's accumulating interest while those expenses or checks that didn't clear on the account, that's where they sit. At the same time, while they're sitting, they're gaining at least some interest. Those are the one that has also cash management, looking into those when there's checks that are clinging to the town's fund.
The liquid investments, do we draw off of those, or those?
Yes. So again, we can withdraw anytime we want, anytime it's needed. When there's expenses that's going out through those accounts, we can, because they are liquid. They are not similar to those other investment that we need to give them like at least few days or a week to make sure that the money will be available for us to withdraw.
So under the playground fund is a checking account, under interest-bearing checking account?
Yes, playground fund, let's see.
Because that's at 5.3%, but there's a Parks revolving fund that's at 0.5% with 96,000 in it.
What's in
Yeah.
that money market account again?
Those are the MMDT money market account.
Do we have any requirement to have funds in a non-interest bearing account? Specifically the depository account and the deputy account. I know you mentioned the $20 that's been there for years, but the other two accounts that actually have funds, really?
The deputy accounts right now, that one is, it has an interest now, very good. I just asked them why it's 0%, so, then I just spoke to the new, vice president of the bank in Fidelity, and they are now interest-bearing account. The depository account is the same as the Sweep Now account. What happened is we have certain amount of 50,000 sitting there. It's more used for covering something if when there's an ACH clearing the account. But it's more like tied to the Sweep Now account, which is the one having an interest rate. So it's like sweeping from 50,000, whatever's more than 50,000 is gonna sweep to this Sweep Now account.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'm not worried at some level of money having near zero or near zero interest rates, but I think at this point, we should be, on all the rest of it, having positive returns on everything. I mean, we have liquid investments, and many of them are 0.01%.
Now, keep in mind, those .01 are the school agency account. They are not charged NSF when there's some checks being deposited there and they bounce. And they are not charged if we have to, do wire from one account to the other to cover the expense when they have some expense that we need to cover, we need to withdraw and go into our payables account.
I guess I'd rather get a 50-cent, overdraft charge and pull in 3% interest on millions of dollars.
Now, keep in mind, this balance can fluctuate. It depends on how much they receive and how much they expended.
Yeah, I get it.
Are those school activities accounts typically fluctuating to the point of being almost completely spent out by the end of the school year, or do they tend to hold kind of a balance across a couple of years?
Oh, they have balance
Okay.
that, well, but there will be a time there's less,
Okay,
but there will be a time there's more. So it depends on the activities. I can certainly, I just don't know what right now is I have to look at the statements on what they're gaining right now for interest rate. But I can certainly ask them if there's some other, that they can offer. But, the reason being sometimes they're low is because of the fees they're not charging the town for the balance of the account.
okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could, regards to the account that you and I had a quick exchange about earlier, that's a case in point. That $90,000 has been sitting in there for a very long time. It's not, that full amount was not in there. It came in from the state as a grant, went out to the citizens in loans, and has come back in and went out, I think, a second time to loans, and over the years has come back in as those loans were paid down. But that account in the last 10 years has done nothing but grow slightly with a few payments coming into it and the 0.5% interest it's earning. That's a stagnant account that could be earning, I think. And again, we're second guessing what we're seeing on paper here. Mylene and her group are, working with us all the time, but, I don't think it hurts to make the suggestion that these types of accounts maybe could be making more. Thank you.
Or they should be used more. If that's septic only is for a specific purpose to help
It's gone
residents.
finally,
Yeah,
It's finally been
that has
spent.
been a struggle.
but it's finally spent. It's going to the parks, it's going to Marshall Park. But I'm sure there's other ones that have been sitting for 30, 40 years. Any other questions for our treasurer?
No, thank you.
All right. Mylene, thank you so much for getting on and walking us through a lot of this. I'm, like Mr. Passio said, you're in this all the time, but we are effectively completely naive to all of this and ignorant. So thank you for taking the time to walk us through this and just kind of go through the process of it. It's been very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. So that moves us on to Capital Planning Committee input. So I have, show that one. I have the spreadsheet up again. Has everyone had a chance to kind of go through it a little bit more at this point? Any further?
I have.
Have you?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I fished through it a little bit this afternoon. Just on another note, in regards to the 2025, well, I was looking actually at the projected out years. I'm putting together a copy of this, the spreadsheet for the 10-year plan, or 10-year list, with a notation of GC as green communities possible on the spreadsheet, so that hopefully for the next meeting that we have, I think it's December 18th right now, I will hand that to the chair and we'll discuss, contacting those departments to be sure that we get into the loop early, because there are some capital items there that are just prime for green communities funding.
Okay, and you have the Excel file, so you can,
Oh, he's already added it to it.
Does that automatically
Oh,
stay
yeah.
in there?
I was
Okay.
watching you, I was at work and I was getting notice that Dave Passios
I
has
hope I
edited
didn't mess
the
it up.
document.
I tell you, as always, I was having trouble printing because it does not want to format
No.
for printing. I did also spot a duplication in there under DPW, I believe it is. It's the fabric salt shed. It's in twice.
Okay.
Capital planning's at the point where I was always frustrated to be this far into the deliberations without the list that the members are going to be receiving, I think, by the end of this week, is it? The consolidated list of the actual projects that you're considering for 2025?
Yep.
Yeah, because it was, the last couple of years, it's always been a floating thing because there have been last-minute changes, and I understand
There are some last-minute changes.
Right,
Yep,
and
but-
there's, yeah, I noted that on a couple of the spreadsheets with stars that, you know, I knew there were changes, but I didn't want to change, I started to change the spreadsheet, and I, no, wait a minute, I don't know what the numbers really are.
And I know schools made a recommendation to push out the window
The schematic design.
schematic design until next year. They did that last night.
Right, and then you had a Parks Commission for Marshall Pond decreased to 50,000,
50,000, yeah.
right? And the asbestos for Passios was removed because that project has already been accomplished.
Right.
Okay. Trying to see if I remembered everything that were the adjustments.
There was, go ahead.
I have some individual concerns about a few of the projects, but I don't think I'm ready to publicly comment on them right now. Let the process go forward.
All right, so just by way of everyone's understanding, like you said, we should get that list for, you know, that we will individually 1 to N rank over the next week. I'll be on travel, so I'll be doing it while on travel. But if you have anything, you can individually, you know, reach out to me and express your concerns or input. And then we meet on the following Monday, the 18th, and then I think the Thursday, the 21st, for the final, or the 20th, I forget, maybe it's the 20th, for the final consolidated ranking meetings that we hand to town manager as our capital planning input. And then we go into more of the long-term planning in the new year.
Right after that, right? Chris, the, what was it? Senior Center parking lot. Now, that was broken out into two projects. Was the construction moved to 26? Or, so the number changed for the engineering, or do you have two projects in 25 for that project, for a parking lot?
My recollection is that it's a project in 25 for the, and then construction in 26.
Okay, and engineering and design and then project in 26. Okay, and then there was, the only other one that, on this spreadsheet that still hasn't been broken up is the school 3M Films. The school has broken that down into separate projects. You guys discussed that quickly, and I missed the outcome of that.
Yeah, and we also believe that at the bottom of that spreadsheet, there's like a hanging 16,000 or some other number. There was kind of a plug number of 130,000 for all the 3M film.
Okay,
The three projects plus that excess down there made up the 130, so I think the 130 was a little bit over.
okay. It's just for prioritization issues. Again, that was one of those things that, you know, they change up the puzzle pieces on, you know, at the last minute, and then you're trying to sort this thing out to get it prioritized. Okay, thank you.
I had a little bit of an issue with the school committee meeting last night. I'm not sure if anybody else watched it, when they were discussing exactly this, the capital planning portion, and kicking the schematic design down the road. And I had someone in the community reach out to me and voice their concerns as well. And that was that the superintendent seemed to take the position that she was somewhat frustrated at the idea, she was frustrated at the MSBC, or the is it MSBC? MSBA, dragging their feet and not getting their recommendations out and what they're going to put forward for the projects that they're looking to fund until January, February timeframe, at which point most small towns have already had to have the issue of coming up with their capital plans. And so they decided to put together a letter that they're going to send off to the commissioner of the MSBA, as well as our local delegations, to advocate for smaller communities that work on a much smaller budget and don't have reactionary funds available. They have to be completely proactive in this sense. But her comments she made comments about how, because of that, it makes it very difficult to do a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, and I didn't agree with it. I didn't like how it sat, and I don't like the idea that just because a contingency within the community, or that's helping fund some of our projects, is slow to respond, that it therefore allows us to not do our due diligence for our town itself. And I think that we still need to have a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, and that if it's not funded in that section because the MSBA decided that they weren't going to be putting money forward for that year, then address it at that point. But that to say that, well, because they're not telling us what they're going to fund, we shouldn't have to do the 10-year plan, I think is a little ridiculous. So I would encourage any of the other department heads to still, I don't know if you've had any pushback on the capital planning from people not wanting to do 5 and 10-year plans, but I'm a little bit concerned with, when I look at the numbers here, are they true numbers, or is it just sort of a, let's throw something on there to placate?
So I think there's a bit of a mixed bag. I think if you have something that's pretty predictable, like police and fire, and how long vehicles last and the types of capital, then they have, pretty predictable 10-year plan. If you look at DPW, there's some things that are knowns or should be knowns, like when culverts and bridges might need repair. I think there's a process ongoing to try to get to that understanding. So is it in there yet? I think it's partly in there. Wind vehicles, again, probably in there. We've had a lot of discussions about infrastructure and stormwater and maintenance of that kind of thing. I think we're learning a lot on that. That needs to be somehow baked into the plan. Schools, they have a bunch of lumped items out in, what is it, like fiscal 30 or 31 or something. I think that was their best guess at the time of what Turkey Hill will need. I think there is a lingering question about what Turkey Hill is in 10 years. So I think, the Municipal Design Committee recommendations coming into town meeting, hopefully, kind of put down the plan of record that we, have had great input from the community on, we rally behind, and it becomes the plan that we execute projects on. I had a lot of discussions, or we had a lot of discussions on things like the Ritter Building, and should we do repairs on that, knowing that the Ritter Building is a target for, future town hall in a build-out on the annex. My statement is, we can always say that, it's always been in flux, we talk about it. It's time to just put something down and execute on it and have a plan that's reflective of it. And I think if you do that, you can lay out that comprehensive plan that then you say, we can afford this, and this is how we afford this, and this is how we do it with or without an override or exempt borrowing, or not having to dip into exempt borrowing. And so I think some are better than others. Turnover in, as Anna mentioned, turnover in personnel has made it hard. And on top of that, I think, vacancies has made it extremely hard. I don't know how town manager is doing it without a finance director, and just getting an associate finance director, and schools not having a finance director yet. So to your question, I think some of these plans it's probably 80%, I don't know. I mean, it's not 100% baked in there yet, but I think that is the goal of the effort in the winter into the spring, is to try to get it as best as possible. And if we need to just plug some, TBDs in there to, to get rid of the dips and valleys and assess the unknowns, I think we should do that as well. But we haven't talked through the exact mechanisms to do it, but, so I don't know if I answered your question, maybe I rambled a little bit, but.
You addressed it at least. I guess part of the other problem that they had was that apparently if you use MSBA funds, there's a timeline before that building can become anything other than a school building. Which means if you're going to use them to replace windows, they were talking 25 years before that building can be anything other than a school building.
Yeah, the other question I have on that is what's the penalty if you don't? Is it the remaining, percentage of that? Those are all the questions that, I think we need to understand, whether, whomever we get those answers from, we need to just understand what that is. Because, if they say, oh, well, if you do it at year 11, you hit a 10%, penalty on it, well, then maybe that's a good decision to do.
Probably a better decision than letting it rot for 25 years and
Sure.
become a TCP again.
Right, yep.
Chris, that's kind of like, I don't know what the regulations are now, but it used to be if you had a CD and you drew it, it had a term to it. If you drew it out, all you lost was the future interest.
Yeah,
There were not any huge penalties. Now, there may be in this scenario, but nobody's ever answered that question, because I wanted to sell the new primary building about 15 years ago in a scenario that really would have worked well. And there were entities looking for school buildings at the time. Oh, no, we can't do that because MSBA will come down on us. Yeah, well, how will they come down on us? That question has never been answered. Although I do think that one of the issues is that there's a clause in there that they may not entertain another project for X number of years. But I don't know. I honestly never got a clear answer.
yeah, and that was discussed last night, I think, too, at the school committee meeting.
was.
So, those are answers that we need to get.
Then you have the town of Harvard that threw out all outside funding and built their school down, was it Harvard or Bolton? It was a number of years ago, but because of all the elevator requirements and all this other stuff, this was a lot of years ago, they threw it out and the taxpayers built the building the way they wanted to build it.
Yeah, sometimes free money isn't free. I mean,
Yeah, but under restrictions.
Good for them for being able to come up with an actual cohesive
Yeah,
plan that they
Before you
agreed
do it.
on.
Yeah.
Could take some lessons from that.
That's why I think it was Harvard. I don't think it was Bolton.
Yeah. So I guess that would sort of be my one comment, is to, I guess, to ensure that we're not just throwing numbers in here to placate the capital planning committee and their request for 5 and 10-year plans, and to actually have the department heads putting the time and energy into thoughts of how best to maintain their infrastructure, their vehicles, their whatever it is they need to maintain.
Yep.
And I guess, my idea would be to do it down 2 roads, to maintain it in an optimal fashion, and then to maintain it in a fashion will keep the thing running or going. I look at, it's easy to build end of life now. We just purchased, or we're going to be purchasing mini splits for the primary school. Those have a 20-year quoted end of life. Well, that's a 20-year plan. You've got that 20 years down the road. Just plug it into your own spreadsheet. When you get
Yep.
10 years down the road, it's already in your 10-year plan.
Right, yep, no, I agree with
Something to
that.
that effect. It's a difficult crystal ball to predict, but there are some things in there that I think are obvious.
And I think once you create it, then you just tweak it every year.
Right. Yeah, if it's a 10-year plan and it moves to year 8, who cares?
Right.
Moves to year 12, great, it's still on the radar. Any other thoughts for Mr. Menard to bring back to capital plan?
Right, again, just, the immediate action relates to fiscal year '25 ranking
Right.
and any input you want to you know, give your representative to that.
Yeah, I am curious to know, I mean, Dave, you did put in a whole bunch of green communities options for school department and for facilities
And
both.
I labeled everything that could absolutely possibly have an appropriate way to fund it through green communities. I'd have to, as I said, I think I'd like to go through this with Dave Blatt and the committee. Some of them were very question marks. I mean, could you spin something out of this project that would be eligible for it? And you know, there are some that are, you know, there's no question, replacing a boiler or replacing hot water system and things like that. Those are energy-using equipment. You're going to get an upgrade when you replace them, so that's 100% appropriate for green communities.
Well, just looking at FY '26, if you look at the ones that you targeted, that's $605,000 out of 3.86 million. That's a substantial chunk.
Right.
That's a bunch of options that could be funded, that likely wouldn't be funded.
Right.
Or would pull from something else that could be funded.
Right, and potentially that grant round would be next spring,
Right.
so would be ahead of the game if we start jumping on it soon.
Ms. Lemieux, you have a comment?
Going back, because I was just doing a little digging, because we did look into the question about turning the primary school into either a town building or some other purpose than a school back in 2021. And what Attorney Costa had researched at that time, and the law that surrounds the MSBA funding, is that the MSBA could rule that they could recover any payments made to the town and stop any future payments to the town if it was outside of that period of time.
For other buildings beyond just the primary school?
Correct.
Huh. That's a substantial penalty.
That was in 2021, so I'm not sure what, you know, if the law has changed since then or regulations.
My worry is that MSBA probably can't even give you a clear answer because they're stumbling through trying to get out stuff that impacts us right now, let alone something that's very unusual and probably wouldn't happen anyway.
All right.
I'm a little bit confused, and I will go back and watch the school committee meeting, but did you say that they pushed out the schematic design for Turkey Hill?
Yes,
For the windows.
for the windows.
Oh, for the okay, yeah, I was
Yeah,
aware of
it
that.
was-
The overall study, that's still in there?
Yes.
Yeah,
it ranks
okay.
second.
I mean, that's, in my mind, that's an absolute piece of the puzzle, and I think they all agree, and we all agree, assuming, that that's a piece that's going to happen anyway. I've always said that any major project that we do in this town, we spend at least $1 million in the engineering and planning stages before we even put anything into a final design. So taking that step now will give us the information we need to go forward with that little piece anyway.
That's the complete window replacement engineering and design, that one?
Yeah, that was. the
Yeah,
one they
that's
voted
out.
Okay.
They voted to move it to next year, I think.
Has it already been moved? Because it's on here for FY '26. That 290.
I think there was another one where it said the schematic.
That's the ADA one here, that's that guy, the 275.
Is there more down the bottom?
Nope.
I don't know.
Which what worries me is that it is this one, that it is the full study.
It's not the full study, though. It was the,
The full study was 200 and something.
75. Because that's the only one that I see for just Turkey Hill windows.
I wonder if I have an older version in the Finance Committee folder for this. but
Okay. I'll go back and watch it again.
If you look at the school committee PowerPoint, they had their 9 items for this year.
I have that right here.
So I don't know which document you're in now, but the one I was messing around with today, it's still up there. Second item under school department.
That's the one, that's the full project, though. That's not just the windows, that's the full
Correct,
renovation.
right.
So that is the big one then.
Right,
That's,
the big one, yeah.
that's staying in though, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the window project somewhere, you're right. Facilities, parks.
LPS capital plan. Got it.
It's in fiscal 27,
Fiscal 27.
the full replacement of the windows.
What's the study
The
part of
study
it?
for it.
The study was originally put in for fiscal 26, and then they
The
changed
290.
it. Yeah, and now it's back to 26.
Do you go to like,
Okay.
And in fiscal 27, it's the 1.107.
Got it. So yeah, here's the study, this 275K study. Slide 13. And then here's the plans only for the window replacement, FY '26.
yep.
So that's the one they're pushing, because they voted on it last night to push it to FY '26.
I know, that's what's now confusing me.
So they should have voted to push it to FY '27 then.
Well, don't quote me then on what they voted.
But conversely, the complete window, you're talking about Turkey Hill, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. The complete replacement is a line item in 27.
Right.
So I think the confusion is there was a revised presentation after their initial presentation with
Okay.
that project in fiscal 25.
Okay.
And now they changed it back.
Okay, so the presentation that we have here is the old presentation where it was originally in FY '26. Then they re-presented to move it to FY '25, and then last night they voted to push it back to FY '26?
Correct.
Okay, so it is the $290,000 one then. It is, yeah. This one, LPS 16-14.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, these shifts like this in the stages where we should be working with a finalized list just drive you crazy when you got your own personal life and you got a period of ultimately 2 weeks for the people on Chris's committee to come up. I mean, I've been in the seat, so I know how it feels. And you're scrambling to get your thoughts solidified and they're moving the numbers around on you all the time.
Yeah, I don't think there's tons of movement on numbers this year, and I do think that I can, between now and next Sunday, a week from Sunday, get my ranking down. Again, I welcome other inputs into the process, whether it's this committee or the public, because it's not just my view I'm representing. And we've had pretty good discussion during the meetings amongst the members.
All right. Moving on to the budget season calendar. So the budget season calendar is in our folder. It was put in there a couple of weeks ago. I don't know where I found it, but I finally found it. So I have it here, and I've actually started adding it to our agenda as well, just to kind of give a heads up as to what dates are coming up. So we really don't have to kick off until January 11th, or January 18th, I guess, is our kind of start date, where the town manager presents her 5-year financial forecast and the capital plan recommendations. So that'll sort of be the start to it. Beyond that, we also have our planned meetings with all of the department heads as well. Those have all been scheduled for, starting in February 15th and 22nd. It goes on from there. So chances are one or two of these may move around, but usually they're pretty consistent, as long as they can get the, the agenda out on time. We don't have to move a meeting. Or whomever's the chair at that point, actually, because I have it on here for January 11th for reorg. So yes, I did put, and I'm going to keep them on here at least for now, the kind of upcoming dates for additional information. For example, I threw on here that the Finance Committee's report for the warrant is due on April 2nd, so we actually have a deadline for that one, so we can get it in to the warrant rather than a secondary sheet. And a couple of portions on there as well.
Can we go back to the prior discussion for 1 second?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So Anna made a comment at the beginning, and we didn't have this as a public forum, but was there any thoughts centered around, she took the time to come here and, make her thoughts known. Any thoughts from this board as to her comments?
I certainly agree that it's got to be difficult to ask for funding when you're looped under facilities, let alone having multiple different department heads over the past few years. I'm sure that's extremely frustrating, but I wonder where else the Parks Department would fall if not under facilities, which makes it difficult.
Yeah, I guess to that point, like, I was kind of thinking of facilities as like, different categories of facilities in that parks was almost its own, the same way that I would think of cemetery
Right.
as being different than DPW. It just,
Right.
So I always kind of partition that in my mind as well.
Sort of have that org chart of just DPW or facilities, and then you've got your categories from there, where you have parks, you have
Yeah.
facilities, you have DPW.
Third category being grounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Not non-park properties, but grounds, say, under general municipal under the select board or something like that.
Ms. Lemieux, do you have a comment for that? Or is your hand still up from before?
No, I do have a comment.
Okay.
So parks is part of facilities. I would just look at it, their divisions with under,
Yeah.
the larger umbrella of parks and facilities. Same as cemetery is under, and sewer is under DPW, similar to that in highway. When the capital planning committee reviews your projects, you're prioritizing projects based on many factors, including the valuation criteria and your own thoughts on the priority of that project. So not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily matter that parks is under, is within facilities. If a project merits a higher priority than another, then that's where it's going to be deemed as being eligible for funding.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, of course.
to make comment to that. Heather, I don't disagree with you at the capital planning level, but I think it's worth separating them out when the department heads submit their capital projects. Only in that, and I think I was at the Parks meeting, so I think I know what Anna had to say for the most part. If the Parks projects could have been prioritized separately, then the facilities director would have prioritized those in a 1, 2, 3 as Parks projects. And once they fold into the capital planning process, it would be relevant if they were mixed in with the facilities or not. It just would give them one other indication that, which one of the 3 Parks projects is the highest priority. I think that's what they're hoping to get out of maybe separating that.
that would still be the case, numbering 1 through 11, if, you know, one of the projects was number 1 on the list and the other 2 were 10 and 11, they're still 1, 2, 3 out of the parks priorities.
Assuming that the capital planning committee is clear on that. Okay. It's another one of those little idiosyncrasies of that process that I think, over time will probably be looked at by different people that are on the committees and maybe see an easier way. I've got a couple of comments, but for capital planning, but it's in that process that they're going to go into for long-term planning later.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of bin things that way already too, like there's, like vehicles, like replacement of vehicles on the schedule, those are just gonna automatically get like pretty high in mine, because that's just following a plan, that happens to be capital items. I'm also gonna take into consideration that, there's one IT item that should be viewed the same as the first or second parks item, or the cemetery items. And even though they happen to be within DPW and somewhere else, I think you do want to strive that there is a need to fund things that come in under the various subcategories, as I think town manager mentioned, that, we need to deal with some of the, I guess just deal with some of that, right? Because, schools has their own priority, but, we got to make sure that we're giving money across the entire spectrum of taxpayers as well, and services for the entire taxpayer base, so.
And last year was kind of a one that you could look at that kind of pushed the other departments so far down the list that they couldn't possibly get funded. And that was because if you key into safety, as has been, it's important, I understand, but safety projects are expensive. And prioritizing the way we did last year chewed up, I don't know what the percentage is, but it chewed up a high percentage of the money in the first 6 items. So then you had the small culverts and all that kind of stuff sitting down low enough so that they fell off the end of the list.
Yep.
Whereas I know in maybe my first year on capital, we actually were in a good financial position, and we knew we were going to get way down the list, but we intentionally put a lot of the small engineering and studies and things that had a second step to them but needed this one to move forward, we intentionally put those at the top of the list.
Yeah, I mean, small projects can always get pushed off infinitum, but, drawing analogies to your own self, at some points you need to go on vacation, and it's hard to justify a vacation financially if you just apply financial metrics, right?
Right,
But
exactly.
you gotta do it.
Ms. Lockwood, you have your hand up, do you want to give a comment?
I do, and Mr. Chair, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to participate in this conversation. I have said it before that I think the capital planning process is good for what it is, but it never addresses the lower, I think at town meeting this year, I mentioned how, asking for 300 yards of sidewalk from Lake Avenue down Wayland to our town beach will never ever compete with, some of the other priorities. I do see that being detrimental, not being able to break parks from the overall facilities. I do think the capital planning process needs to, like when we budget in the private world, you say, I'm going to spend 10% in marketing hours, I'm going to spend so much in operations. I think the capital plan process lacks that, because if we lack over the years, we always going to be spending money on safety, on anything that has the word safety, on anything that has the word, school. And I support that, but when we do that, we run into the problem of always deprioritizing things that also count for the overall quality of our lives. And I think just as Chris Marnard described, the, capital plan committee members do have their own prioritizing of like, oh, I do want to give some money to, senior center, recreation. And that's where, by the town not separating parks from the overall facilities, or parks from DPW or cemetery from DPW, we never see if we actually are addressing the needs of those groups. So, just funding, like if I were to ask today, town manager, how often have we ever funded any capital project for cemetery? I don't think we could easily come up with that answer because it's simply lumped together under the PW. So I do see the detriment of just lumping these things together as one big project. I do see the value, without a doubt, of being a small town. Operationally speaking, we need to consolidate. And in fact, I could even make a case that we should not have two facilities department in town. I think we should have one facilities department in town that covers school and town. But when we go into capital projects, as an overall, just as we would do overall argument in any kind of private budget, like we should not be exceeding, marketing should not be exceeding 15% of our overall budget. We need to do the same thing in capital planning. And when we lump these smaller, subsets of the town into one large umbrella, we are losing sight of that. Do I think capital plan needs to have a more refined process? Yes. But by the town not presenting these projects as separate, it masks these projects, these priorities even further. So while we can, operationally speaking, can still maintain cemetery, parks, and, historical commission, APDC, all these other things that I can go under, one big department, we should not mask them further by not being able to prioritize them on our capital. So I hope it makes sense because it's a little bit off the cuff. Heather's a lot better than I am on those, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will say that, like, having Anna attend the capital planning during the facilities, I found helpful. I probably would have found it helpful to have had cemetery there, the cemetery commission, during the presentation that DPW gave. So I think, capital items tend to, not just be day-to-day operations. They kind of get into, oversight that some of the boards get into. I might have seen some value in having the municipal design committee at the facilities one as well. So, maybe that is a process improvement we should talk about as a capital planning committee, that, some of the boards and commissions that relate to the departments that are there. I mean, the school committee was at the school department meeting. That was helpful. So that could be another way by way of process improvement.
I wonder if it would also be, just a thought, we have a requirement that you have to have $20,000 on your ask in order to be a capital purchase. We have items that are over $1 million. That's a far difference, or a large difference between the two. I wonder if it almost makes sense to have two categories of capital planning. You've hit your threshold of 20K, great, that's fantastic, but those are the ones that are going to either get swallowed up behind the $1 million projects, or you might get one or two in there, but you lose sight of the ones that just kind of get kicked all the way to the bottom because there's 10 or 12 of them. Whereas if you have, a 20K to a 500K or something like that, and then you have 500 and over as two separate ones, two separate lists that are looked through.
Sure. I mean, I think that can all be, rubrics, if you would, or means by which members can look at the problem and assess their ranking too. and like, it's kind of the way I'm doing it. But are you going as far as to say we should have, different articles related to small capital projects versus large capital projects, or?
Potentially, or at least something that says X percentage must be spent on capital projects below X dollar amount.
I would say as a rule of thumb, maybe we would have something like that, but if there's a year where that just doesn't make sense, then I wouldn't want to be locked into it either. Again, I think this is good input, and I think if the, I agree with the sentiment of everything being said here, that, you gotta find a way to fund the small projects and the ones that, add value to our lives, as well as the big projects that are necessary for our safety and continuity. The other thing I said at the meeting was, as it relates, like, say to Wallace, if we're gonna go forward and fund a capital item or some, investment to begin with, we've got to fund the maintenance and eventual replacement and repair of it over time as well. I mean, that should be considered as anything we put forward. If we, the track's a good example of that, right? I mean, we funded $1 million+ track, and did everyone know, maybe it was said, but did everyone know that every 10 years, 15 years, you got to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars again to keep it online? I don't know if everyone knew that or was paying attention to that, but that's just a reality now, that you got to account for that. So anything new, you got to think about the long-term operations and sustainment of that item. So again, something to consider as you as we go through the process.
Ms. Lemieux?
Sorry. I think what we just need to keep in mind is it would be nice to fund everything, but there is a finite amount of resources every year. So even though, we'd like to fund some smaller projects or things further down on the list in the prioritization, I mean, even if it were something that were put into the operating budget, there is a limit to what we have to raise, and that may lead to the question of, like, what are, thinking outside the box, what are different ways we can fund this? And we've, I think, done a very good job about advocating for projects to our delegation, other committees, like the Park Commission, for the grants that they're going after. The town has been very successful in years prior with grants. So those are sometimes the ways that we fund other types of projects.
Thank you.
So, just along those same lines, and I didn't know if I was going to ask it, but like Park Revolving Fund has $97,000 in it according to this, and I don't know if we tapped into that for something else since June, but are those other means by which we can get some of these projects kind of above the line, because we say, hey, we have dedicated funding elsewhere to account for that? We kind of apply the how we would fund the capital planning after the capital planning committee process. Certainly, we think of that, I think, for like stabilization funds with like vehicles or some things, but.
No, that's a good comment. And I can't say what the exact number of the revolving fund right now is, though, but globally speaking, other accounts should be looked at.
Chris, I could be wrong, but I think part of the reason that account's showing so high at this point is that all the beach fees probably piled into that account in June. So
I don't think we make as much from beach fees as you think we do then.
well, how that account then went from 30,000 to 90,000, and
Yeah, I'm not sure,
Got it.
yeah.
yeah,
good question.
I actually texted that number to the clerk, who we all well know.
All right, thanks for
course.
revisiting it.
Sure. Any closing thoughts for at least a group meeting on this one? Now's your chance to say it in public.
I'm gonna second that comment regarding the Parks revolving fund, because in the beginning of this year, well, I don't know where it is, but I usually run revolving fund. At the end of last year, it was about 60,000. We spent over $30,000 to repair the town beach.
Right.
And we have had about, it was about $20,000 in beach fees, which involves the student license and memberships. And we have had other expenses, other revenues coming from it. I don't believe, based on that total, that all the bills have been paid from that account, which it does account for all the programs that we hire during the summer. So during the summer, we hire, in average, so just as a set point, we ran this past year, for the first year, every week, which was in this fiscal year, so between July and end of August, every week we ran a summer enrichment program. I don't want to call it camp for various reasons. And we take a small cut on that. So I don't believe the reconciliation on that fund on that account has been done. I can guarantee you that. Because in most of the time we were making maybe 10-15%. So we were selling like $3,000 in fees. We were usually paying out $2,700, and maybe the town would keep $300 as a way to pay for the credit card fees and our work for putting the program together. It's definitely not a money making. So there is a great chance that when we paid out these vendors, it was not properly posted into the correct account. And by the end of the year, these accounts will probably be posted properly, and that fund will be drawn back. Based on what I know, it came in as a revenue because we did have a spreadsheet. I would think that perhaps we have collected 20,000 total, and by the end of the year, we probably will draw some for salaries. So maybe from the 37,000, by the end of this year, we'll have $50,000 left. Just want to make sure that we understand that we are not necessarily making a lot of money. It's just how accounting sometimes works.
Yeah, and I don't know if you were in the beginning, that value was as of June 30th.
Okay, so that probably does make sense, so yes. Yeah, so that account, I can guarantee you, it is not a 90,000. If it is, it's because things have not been properly posted.
Thank you for the clarification. All right, moving back over to budget season, so just, of course it would do that. There we go. So just so we have a preliminary idea, and for the public, I'm going to start, like I said, adding these onto our agendas as we move ahead. The town manager has scheduled out, starting in the second half of February 22nd, for Land Use, Council on Aging, and Library. And that begins our official weekly meetings, I believe, start on February 15th, if I'm not mistaken, and carry on through, effectively all through March as well. And then we have our town meeting scheduled for May 4th. So, Star Wars Day. That'll be fun.
And we have Leap Day.
And we do have a leap day. It's true. We have a meeting on our leap day. Oh, interesting. We split up fire and police.
bad
On
one.
on a budgetary item, did you get my email regards to the meeting expense line for FinCom?
It's on here. It's coming up.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I emailed Eileen earlier today and double checked. Chris, now's your chance to ask if they're gonna get a dog before fire department comes in.
It's not on the capital plan.
Maybe you could get Cody to come in. Cody's a cute dog. Hank won't have anything to do. All right, moving along to minutes. The November 13th minutes are still in the drive. Has anybody else had a chance to read through them since last week?
I got to tell you, I need some help finding those, because I got into this document, but I can't find the minutes at all,
Okay,
so.
I can work on that and send you direct
Okay.
links.
And that invitation to join the group, the Finance Committee group, it's messed up my receipt of emails, because it focuses on Finance Committee members' emails only, and
Yeah.
FinCom emails, and I struggle to get my other ones from other departments.
I do as well. I've had that issue too. I have to go search for new emails that are there that aren't actually listed at the top of my email list.
There's a way to have everything forwarded, but I haven't figured it out yet.
Well,
My phone is set up different than my laptop and different than my desktop, so.
information technology is here at 7 o'clock on leap day. You could ask them then, we'll talk to Sizer. Committee reports. I can't imagine too much has happened in the last week, but does anyone have any special committee reports they want to talk about?
No. As I mentioned, Green Communities will be meeting around I think it's been fluctuating between the 18th and 19th, so we'll be meeting that week.
Okay. Again, I would plug the planlunenburg.org survey. They'll be meeting next week. I won't be there, but they'll certainly be here. I don't have any other ones for now. Topics for future meetings. Right now, we are scheduled to not have another meeting until January 11th, which I'm kind of okay with.
Sure.
Unless anybody's just desperate to meet before we meet every week for 2 months.
Do we have anyone that's put in for,
We do, and she is, actually just saw an email today from Eileen to schedule an appointment committee meeting for next week on the 13th. So with any luck, we will have a 7th member on the 13th.
okay, good. We are complete.
We might be.
Are you quitting?
No.
Anybody wants my seat, I will give it up, but I am committed till, as I.
At least the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, tying into topics for future meetings, because of that, I've been pushing off kind of the reorg until we actually had a full committee. So my thought was on that first meeting in January, if we do have a full 7th member, or regardless, right now we're up to 6, I think that's good enough to do at least a full reorg. It's been close to a year, I think, if not over. I think it's been over a year,
Yeah, I think we did it.
in the fall.
Well, we usually do it in June or July or whenever we.
When did we do it? I don't even, it was last year.
Well, it was probably a year and a half ago.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, and then I figure we can go through all the committee liaisons as well and reorganize those properly. And then on January 18th, so we will have we'll have 3 weekly meetings in January as well. The town manager is doing her 5-year financial forecast and the capital planning meeting as well. And then we'll have our regular January 25th meeting, and then off we go. Any other topics for future meetings before we kind of get heavily into budget season? Perfect. So some of the important dates that I had on here, there's the MMA meeting. We currently are sitting with $914 in our meetings budget, which would fund 3 people to go to the MMA meeting if anybody else wants to go as well. So we do have money to pay for that. The deadline is to sign up is January 10th.
Yeah, and that was just an estimate, because I haven't booked a room yet, and mileage is reimbursable. I'm not sure what the ruling is, but I usually only stay one night. I know Heather stayed down there one night, and that must come out of her account, but in any case, you know, it's going to be somewhere in the realm of $300 per
Yeah.
committee member that attends. And I had a conversation with Elaine the other day also, and I'd like the town manager, if she hasn't already gotten the message from Elaine, that consider maybe bumping that up a little bit. That number's been the same as long as I can remember, since before I got on the finance committee the last time.
Put your request in for an increase to the budget.
Well, Elaine made that, Elaine,
We
I'm pretty
did.
sure we bumped it up in fiscal '24.
We did. We went from 500 to 1,000, right? Yeah,
yeah.
it's already been
okay.
doubled.
Yeah. I just remember having to vote a transfer to cover a few years ago because we overspent the account.
Well, as it stands, if nobody stays over, we can fund 3.8 people, so. I think that should be able to at least afford a hotel room or something like that. If I'm going, I don't intend to stay over, so I'll just drive out twice.
I do the Friday night only because I do reach out to other finance committees, and we get to sit at dinner and, you know, even after dinner and chat about different things.
Sounds like
It's a really good experience if you really get yourself out there and introduce yourself, and even at breakfast. I mean, all of the times that you get to sit down with a group from another town, there's so much information passed back and forth. It's great.
It is. No, I thoroughly enjoyed it last year. I highly recommend people go. Just for general information, the town meeting warrant will be opened on January 9th and close again on March 18th. And then we just have the regular dates for preliminary budget presentations, meetings, elections, all of that. Is there any other public comment from the public tonight? We have public this evening. It's nice. Seeing none. Any other public comment from the committee? Oh, wait, sorry, Ms. Lockwood, go right ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to participate in a couple of these discussions. That's all. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for joining. Any public comment from the committee? No. All right. Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are unanimous. At 8:58, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.